ดีค่ะ Hello everyone. Today we are honored to open talk to a gentleman with many interesting hats as the Chief Executive Officer of HT Telemedia Global Data Center Thailand, Chief Digital Officer of Frasers Property Thailand, and Chief Executive Officer of PBA Robotics Thailand. Let's join us in welcoming คุณสุภรัตน์ ศิวะเพชรานาถ สิงหรา ณ อยุธยา สวัสดีค่ะ คุณสุ
สวัสดีครับ
ค่ะ Welcome to Open Talk โปรแกรม under Open Tech Technology Sharing Platform powered by TCC Technology Group คุณสุ how are you doing?
I'm well, Kunsom. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a great follower and a great fan of Open Talk. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I think it's great in terms of the initiatives you're doing, Kap. So thank you so much for having me, Kap.
ค่ะ Oh thank you so much ค่ะ คุณสุ for your compliment. Okay, let's start with a brief background about yourself.
Sure. Okay, so my name is Supparat. So by training, I'm technically an engineer. So I'm a software engineer by training. I used to work here in Thailand and different countries around the world. I started off really more in the FSI business, so more the banking sector. So I come from a platform, real-time, high pressure, fast moving type of world. So I was working for an international company, and then for about maybe 12 years. And then I decided that I want to more focus more on Thailand or in ASEAN, because I felt that at that point in time, the world was changing and the word global wasn't, in my view, it wasn't really anymore about New York, it wasn't London, it wasn't really Tokyo, but I think things were coming more to, let's say, Beijing, things were coming more to Singapore, and obviously given that I am Thai, I want to focus on what we can do for the country. So coming from an international background, I moved to one of the local Thai companies. I got involved day one from an engineering perspective. I helped manage the product team, so I got into product management. And then over a period of time, for good or bad reason, I got sales KPIs on that. So I started to get into sales and marketing. And at that point in time, I was basically running the data center and cloud business for another Thai company at that point in time. And then things evolved. And then I felt that at that point in time in the industry, there was a lot of talk about fintech. There was a lot of talk about all these startups and so on and so forth. But I felt that at that point in time that fintech was still very early, and I felt that fintech had a lot of regulation. But I saw another industry that I think was ripe for disruption, which was basically the property sector. And the reason I say that is because the property sector globally represents about 27 trillion US dollars, so it's the largest asset class. So if you take all the stock exchanges in the world, and when we combine it together, it's only maybe about 5 or 6 trillion, but property around the world is worth 27 trillion US dollars. And there's very, very limited usage or adoption of technology. So with that in mind, I decided to get into more of a real estate background. And so today I have a combination of roles. So I work for Fraser Property Thailand, which is a major real estate player under the TCC group as well, which is the largest real estate landowner here in Thailand, along with different countries as well. So I take care of the digital transformation on the real estate side. That's part of the role. But at the same time, given my kind of engineering and sales background, I'm also accountable for one of the data center businesses called ST Telemedia, Global Data Center, which is a JV, a joint venture between Fraser Property and STDGDC based in Singapore. The third and final hat that I'm responsible for is kind of about robotics and AI. So as part of my interest to continue to kind of grow and learn, I didn't want just to do digital transformation. I didn't just want to limit myself to data center related services, but I wanted to try something new. So they gave me more KPIs, which I was happy to take. So I also run a company called Platform for Bots Automation, or in short PBA, which is also a joint venture between Fraser Property Thailand and PBA Group in Singapore on that. So that's kind of the brief background.
Interesting background.
ครับ
So with your experience, how do you see the international trend of data center and property business?
That's a great question. So I think obviously as we're, in the new year, and I think we've been through a couple of years now, two, maybe almost 3 years of the epidemic crisis on that. I think obviously we've seen an acceleration of digital services being adopted on that. Now, if we put that into perspective to the Thai economy, so digital services have really increased, and people are spending more time and more money on digital services. But the reality of things, at least from a Thailand perspective, the money is actually not going back to the Thai economy. It's going to different digital services that are marketing related services, but these revenue are not so much taxable to the Thai economy, right? So people are actually spending money and it's going outside the country. That's number one. Number two, with the COVID situation, every government around the world has to give subsidies to help the economy. So every government, in a way, is going to debt. So the deficit is getting worse. So there's a bigger gap that's happening. So then the question really becomes that this is the current norm and the continuing acceleration. How is this going to impact property and data centers? So I'll answer that in two areas. Obviously, number one, with the acceleration of growth services and Thai people being a huge consumer base with digital services on that, it has actually accelerated the expansion of data centers globally, number one. But specifically to answer your question for the data center business here in Thailand, prior to COVID, data center growth was roughly around 15%. But with COVID now, we're looking about maybe 26% growth. That's driven again because of the expansion of cloud providers that are expanding because of the software services that are expanding for digital services as well on that. So we see huge growth, and we see a lot of international players coming to the country. And in a way, this is quite a good thing for the economy, because every data center that's coming to Thailand, obviously, they're actually doing a direct investment into the country, which means that there's more investment in the country, and it will generate more jobs in the country. And for the existing industry, it will also uplift the current skill sets on that as well. So for data center, it's definitely growing, right timing, and it will continue to expand, I think, for the next 3 to 5 years, without doubt, at this rate, about 26%. On the property side, the reason that data center is related to property is because, so again, let's focus a little bit on the Thai market. So in the property, there's about maybe 4 different asset classes. There's hospitality, which is hotels, which isn't really doing so well because of COVID. There's residential. So residential during COVID has done recently okay because people were moving from condominiums into townhomes because they felt that if they had their own townhome, it's more safe compared to a shared elevator, for example. That did relatively okay. For the commercial buildings, all our offices was directly impacted simply because people work from home. Like for example, our conversation right now, we're doing it remotely because people can work from anywhere. And the fourth asset class is something we call industrial, which is basically warehouses and factories. So each one was impacted in a different way. The ones that benefited from COVID or the acceleration of digital services was definitely in the industrial class, simply because of more online shopping. So the more stuff we buy online, the more services we buy online, there was like expansion of warehouses and factories within Thailand on that. But at the same time, with the expansion of the back end, which is the real estate industrial side, there was a change of customer journey. So for example, we order food from different places, and so on and so forth. So there was thinking that if people are ordering more goods online, is there an opportunity from a trend perspective to move the warehouse, which is on the outskirts of a city, like in Bangkok is in around Bana, Bang Phra, Supparat? Do we want to move that into the city on that? So basically the implication from a property perspective is that these four asset classes that I talked about will start to merge together. For example, I'm at home, right? So it's technically residential, but it's also an office now. So office and commercials come together. If I was an SME exporting or delivering stuff, it could be also my warehouse as well. So what we see in the property space is all this is coming together, but the bridge that will connect all different asset classes is going to be a platform. Is actually going to be a digital platform. So for example, a great example, right, whether it's Grab, Lineman, Food Panda, it's a digital platform that connects the restaurants or the retail or commercial space to the residential space on that. So one of the key trends to answer you is the data center space will continue to grow at 26%. Asset classes we see will continue to merge as well on that. And the key enabler to connect all this together will definitely be the digital services on that for new services. And this will lead to new business models. We've seen this in the hospitality already, such as Airbnb already as a service. We see this in the office space that merges in terms of Justgo, which is as a service model as well. And we believe that this kind of as a service model where you no longer need to own the square meter will also evolve into the industrial space as well. So if you had to set up your own factory consume, you don't need to, in the future, perhaps, you don't need to rent let's say 1,000 square meters anymore. You will pay as if it's a cloud model. So same thing as your electrical and water bill. The number of parcels coming in and going out of the warehouse, that's the amount of money that you would pay. So if you have no traffic, you don't have to pay rent, for example. So we see that moving to a cloud model, which I think in our technology world, it's a very normal business model. So we see real estate moving towards this new business model as the asset classes emerge together as well.
It seems like you see the strong growth in data center area, right? And
Yes.
the kind of convergence into platform for the property, and you see lots of opportunity and also the new model in the property area also, right?
ถูกต้องครับ exactly.
Okay, so now let's talk about technology. What's your opinion about AI or artificial intelligence? Any case or the impressive story about AI?
Okay, so I think that's a great question. So I think obviously AI is playing a greater role, and I think for me, if I had to sum it up in my perspective of AI, I think AI means or is perceived in different areas by different people. Some of it is a lot by the media, some of it's by movies, and so on and so forth. But for me, I think AI is really about just one word, which is the word intent. It really depends on your intent. Because if it's just really more about analytics and doing statistical analysis, you could argue that that's still really much kind of business intelligence, business insight, data analytics. But if AI can actually understand your intent on that, on what is it you want to achieve in a certain context, that's really AI. So with that in mind, you have to understand kind of human nature. So for example, there's this big debate around the world that maybe ask the audience, and the audience can maybe answer silently as you listen to this clip, that there's a famous question that says, is a tomato, is that really a fruit or is it actually a vegetable, right? Now, some people might say that a tomato is a fruit. And interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure some people might not be sure and might say it's actually a vegetable, right? Now, technically, based on the science of it, a tomato has a seed, and therefore, if it has a seed, it should be classified as a fruit, technically, right? But however, based on an official ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States back in the early 1900s, the Supreme Court of the United States basically said that tomato should be classified as a vegetable and not a fruit. Right now, why did this happen? Right, technically, it's a fruit, but the U.S. Supreme Court is saying no, it's not a fruit, it's a vegetable, and the reason for this is it's based on the intent. Now, the intent of the United States government at that point in time was, what happened was they had a big drought in the United States in the early 1900s. So they had to import tomatoes because they had to make a lot of ketchup, right? They eat a lot of ketchup in the US, right? But if they classified it as basically as a fruit to import it from a customs perspective, right? There was a basic free trade of fruits. They would not be able to collect any taxes on that. So the government said, no, we're going to classify it to be a vegetable so the US government can collect more taxes. So their intention was about revenue, was about to collect taxes on that. Again, a tomato is the same thing. It looks exactly the same, but in the eyes of the person, their intent is very different. So I think this is still a very early area in my perspective in terms of what's happening. But one interesting use case, I think a lot of people talk about NLP, a lot of people talk about self-driving cars, but one area I want to talk a little bit about is maybe politics on that. A little bit controversial, but a little bit maybe interesting. So AI, at the end of the day, given its intent, will really be dependent on the regulation that's really involved as part of the AI regulation. So countries like the US have come out with regulation that's called basically the US AI Regulation Guide. And to be honest with you, Consum, there's the technology, as you say, the technology is going to be more advanced than the government regulation. But in order for it to be adopted, we have to understand the regulation aspect. So from a US perspective, there is a policy that says all AI has to be declared legally. So for example, if you're talking to a chatbot in Thailand, technically the chatbot does not need to declare that it is a chatbot. But in the United States, the law says that if it's a chatbot, it needs to declare itself as actually a chatbot itself, for example, to understand that are you talking to a machine and the intent that you want to talk to, because it's kind of in a way legally as a false premise on that. So we see this happening a lot more. And the great thing about AI is that it's going to start to get play a little bit more in terms of the political area to figure out about elections. I think you've seen issues in the past with like Cambridge Analytica. And I think that AI will continue to drive not only from a revenue perspective, but also from a government and political perspective as well. So this is one area you need to keep an eye on top of the other, I think, well-known use cases such as self-driving cars, analytics, NLP, machine learning, and so on and so forth on that.
Okay. So you think that AI can be manipulated also, right? So
yes,
it depends on the intention, right?
Yes, completely. Because at the end of the day, the AI, the word has to be it has to be taught. So there was a use case of a when Microsoft came out with something called almost a chatbot, but it was a chatbot that was linked to Twitter, and it was basically called Tay Tweets. And basically, what it would do is that it would tweet out, for example, the first tweet that this AI through a chatbot tweeted was "Hello World," and it would learn with the people that would tweet back and tag it back. Over a period of time, a lot of kids were giving it very bad language. So day one, it was saying "Hello World," but at the end, it said something very nasty on that. So that's also one of the limitations of AI in the sense of it needs supervision and so on and so forth on that.
So how's the growth of AI industry worldwide?
Okay. So I think AI, we split it up in terms of different areas. So for example, if we look at a generic form, according to IDC research, based on data this year in 2021, AI, we can classify into different areas. We can classify, for example, AI software platforms in itself. So platforms that provide AI as a service. These platforms, according to IDC, is growing roughly about 44%. The second area in terms of AI application development. So people that are actually making new applications and new services on top of these software platforms. This is growing roughly around 34%. The other areas that are growing roughly between 15 to 20% are in related to AI CRM, AI in terms of system infrastructure, so more on the hardware side. This type of AI use cases in terms of the revenue growth is growing roughly about 15 to 20%. So you'll see more and more software, and you'll see more and more application of AI being deployed at roughly 40 to 45%.
So the growth is quite strong, right?
Yeah, very strong, very strong.
Okay. What's the impact of AI on data center and property business?
Thank you. That's a great question. So the property business is one of the areas, again, as I said, that hasn't adopted too much technology in the past. But given kind of the trends of COVID acceleration and safety factors, we see a couple of use cases. First on the data center space, and then a little bit more on the property space. So the data center business, there's a couple angles around data center. One obviously is around the security, the physical security of the data center. And so data center technically is a building, and on average, like a 10-story building, or about roughly about maybe a 25,000 square meter building to 30,000 square meter building, will roughly have about 1,000 CCTV cameras installed. This is kind of the usual installation in any kind of building of this size. For good or bad reason, a lot of these buildings have not really utilized the data that's being captured on that from a security perspective. So one AI use case that we have deployed in a data center as part of security management for the physical building is that we deployed AI CCTV cameras. So with this, we've done a couple things. We've done one thing about counting first the number of people coming in, coming out into the data center, right? And that allows us always to make sure that the people coming in have the right security access. Number two, it also allows us to make sure from a building management perspective of any kind of safety issues, meaning that worst case, let's say we have to call BCP and we have to evacuate the building. I would like to know how many people are actually in and have gone out of the building. I think that's number one. Number two, we're using AI because the data center is a private building, but it has our operation staff. It also has our vendors. It also has our customers coming in. And because of COVID, we want to make sure that we isolate the interaction as much as possible on that. So we use AI basically to determine, is this person a customer? Is this person a vendor? Is this person actually more of our internal staff as well on that? At the same time, from a revenue or cost management standpoint, instead of setting a security guard to walk around to do inspection, given the CCTVs already implemented, we use geofencing to basically look at, in this area, it's restricted, and if people come into this area, it basically sends an alert. So that's one use case that we're doing from security and property management on the data center side. The second use case that we've done for this data center specifically, and also related to property as well, is we use something called a digital twin. So digital twin is another aspect of AI in a sense that we take the blueprint of the building and then we basically do a 3D model, so a digital twin of the actual building itself. But the most important thing with this building is that it's a live digital twin. So we have IoT devices, which are basically the CCTV sensors that was already inside the building aligned to this. And we use it for a couple of things. We use it for the design of the building. We also use it for the asset management of the building as well. So as you can imagine, a building in general will have a generator, will have a UPS, will have electrical equipment, so M&E equipment. And all these equipment, whether it's a normal commercial building or a data center building, will require maintenance on that. So instead of doing a manual process, we track the maintenance windows to this digital twin on that as well. And secondly, given that we're trying to uplift the industry, we are trying to use the digital twin as if to be a simulation. So for example, if you were to be a pilot, before you get on the real plane, you have to go through a simulation in terms of a pilot simulation. We're using this AI digital twin simulation, this is a 3D digital twin, to make sure that our engineers are following the standard operating procedure through the digital twin first, before they actually go into the production room on that. So it also becomes a training ground as well on that. So it actually goes beyond the actual property pain point, but it also enhances the operation and operating costs as well on that. So that's something that's very, very specific that we're doing on the data center side. On the property side, what we're seeing, again, because of COVID, people don't want to interact so much together, but people are starting to come back. We've started to implement AI in our robots company that's deployed in our property. So robots will be, I think, more and more common, at least food delivery robots and security guard robots. Now, the problem with these robots in the past is that in order for them to navigate a consume, so let's say we have Google Maps, it's quite easier because it's based on roads and GPS. But when we get to the building, there is no kind of GPS within the building on that. And to implement a beacon system into the building is also very, very timely, and it's also very, very expensive. So what we've done is that we've taken the same use case from a CCTV perspective, that AI, and we've given those AIs basically the eyes to the robot itself. So the robot then uses this AI, but we convert it into a navigation platform. So it actually runs around and it doesn't need to actually have any GPS or beacon sensors on that. And the use case for this is, again, from a property management, is that we want to be able to use the robot to be a security guard. So to do a patrol. And this gives us confidence that the robot is actually moving around on time. It gives our customers confidence as well that the robot is actually doing a security patrol in itself as well. At the same time, there is no OT, so we don't have to pay overtime for the robot. The robot doesn't take any sick leaves. So it's a great way that we can do a very consistent and cohesive experience from an AI into property management as well. The third use case is something that's also very, very simple, but unfortunately, we haven't really utilized it so much in Fraser before, is license plate recognition. So as part of our industrial estate, Fraser Property Thailand owns about 45% of the market share here in Thailand. So the number of cars that are coming into property every single day is over 100,000 of that. So we've actually deployed license plate recognition, which is a mature technology, simply to enhance the experience. So instead of coming in, exchange your card, if you're a member, so Kusome, we take your license plate and make you a member of Fraser Property Industrial. We recognize your license plate and it opens as if you're going on the highway, basically on that. And that obviously helps to reduce our costs from a manual security guard perspective. And in the industrial estate, one of the key important factors is logistics. So if you go to the Bang Na or Sumuprakan area in the morning, there's huge amount of traffic in the morning because all the trucks are moving in. So if an industrial estate can be more seamless, it actually saves that, it makes that experience better and saves minutes, which sounds very small, but very important to our customers there as well. So that's some simple stuff that we're doing so far, both in the data center, robotics, and industrial side.
Oh, okay. So lots of room for that we can apply technology like AI and also along with other things like IoT, robotics, and digital twin, right?
Correct.
In Thailand, is it aligned with the international trend?
I think that's a great question. So AI again is about the intent, right? Now, intent really means that when you apply it to a human being, because the beautiful thing and the difficult thing about AI is that it's very easy to see if AI is incorrect. So for example, for the license plate recognition, so you don't have to be a software developer or AI expert. But if you know that, for example, if your car is registered and you know you're registered and you come to our industrial park and the gate doesn't open, there's no debate that the AI is incorrect. Or, for example, if you know that the robot needs to move to a door, but it's not hitting the door, it's hitting the wall, you know exactly that it's incorrect, right? So on the technical side, I think that Thailand doesn't really lag behind because actually it's actually the same use cases as terms of license plate recognition, in terms of counting people, facial recognition, and so on and so forth on that. Those are, if you may, the step one use cases. But I think where the opportunity is for Thailand and every country as well is to have AI that's very specific to a certain industry. So for example, in Thailand, obviously, our main economy is driven by services, so tourism, for example, right? It's driven now mostly by manufacturing as well, from an industry 4.0 as well. And it's driven by the agricultural sector. Those are the three biggest sector in Thailand. Now, so if we look at that perspective, I do know a lot of startups that are trying to make pretty good inroads in terms of using data. For example, in the IoT for agricultural, we're trying to find ways to basically increase the organic growth of different vegetables and fruits on that using data and therefore using artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of agriculture tech of trying to uplift the entire industry and making sure that lives of farmers are also being increased on that. In that area, I say that we are definitely leading, and simply because that's our bread and butter as an economy. Challenge is, I think, personally speaking, is that we tend to focus our engineering thinking and from a corporate perspective on very sexy industries like fintech, right? And there's a lot of things going on in fintech. But in the areas that we should lead as a country, like agriculture, I think we need to spend more time in that because we have an unfair advantage. I think that we should spend more time in the industrial 4.0 tech, the industrial tech, which we don't really lead in that, but we should because we are actually a manufacturing hub, but we don't. Tourism, there isn't so much we can do other than from a service standpoint. But one area that I think Thailand is also renowned for in the subset of tourism is actually health tourism. So medical tourism. Our doctors are some of the best in the world. And telemedicine, we see a lot of trends there. I think that Thai doctors, Thai engineers are very intelligent. So I think that my recommendation to people that are listening is I think the technical side of AI will continue to grow like 40, 45%. I believe that it'll become easier and easier because new models will come and new models will continue to be mature. But the application of these models to drive adoption and therefore drive more users and therefore drive more data and therefore drive more maturity of the model has to come from the business case. And the business case should be relevant to the actual business requirement of each country. So a Thailand should be around services, whether it's tourism or medical tourism. It should play against our strengths as manufacturing because we are a hub in that. And number three, it should play against our other strength, our natural strength about being an agricultural kitchen of the world strength. But I don't really see that happening. I see everybody going to the banks, which I understand because they pay a lot of money for people. So, but I think that's the opportunity in Thailand. Yeah.
Mhm. Could you please elaborate more about the challenge and opportunity of AI?
Sure. So I think AI, in my perspective, again, is still in the early stages. But one of the common limitations of AI is that you will never ever have a complete data set. That's never going to happen. Even for us as human beings, when we go outside from destination A to destination B, we look at Google and Google says that you arrive here, let's say in 45 minutes. But that's never the exact case. So imagine if somebody comes up with a Google Map service and says, I will guarantee you that you will arrive within 45 minutes. Because Google will never guarantee that. So even with Google, Google cannot guarantee because Google itself does not have all the data sets. So from an AI standpoint, that will always be a gap or a limitation in itself. The second area or second limitation of AI is that one size will not fit all. So let's say we do an AI for our data center, or we do an AI for the agricultural tech for Thailand. The AI for Thailand may not fit the AI. Let's say we want to do the same vegetable growth in Brazil because of different conditions as well. So AI is very much a very personalized and almost in a way customized because it really is dependent on the context on that. Number three, AI does not have compassion. So if it goes based on its logic, it is an artificial intelligence. So it will not have any empathy. It will not have any compassion. And it will just do as it completely understands. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but those are the kind of three limitations. So limited data set, one size cannot fit all. And the reality of things, AI is AI. It's not a human being. It's not meant to be a human being. And therefore, there's no empathy and there's no compassion with AI.
Okay, then given that three factors, how to practically apply and deploy AI?
That's a great question. This is one of I think, the most difficult things. So in Fraser, we use a model for any innovation, especially around AI, that's called the DVF model, which is part of design thinking. So the D stands for desirable, the V stands for viable, and the F stands for feasible on that. So I'll start with the F first. So the F usually is the technical feasibility. So can the technology enable the outcome on that? And as engineer, we're very good at finding solutions on that, right? So most of the time the technology is already there and there is a solution technically. The V viable is more on the business case or the financial viability. So we make an investment, depending on the investment, the cost, is there really a return? Because fundamentally in the corporate world and so on, as you know, we do look at numbers. not just in terms of, the investment or the usage of technology as well. So financially, is it viable? What's the return of investment? What's the IRR, for example, and how many years on that? But most importantly is the D. Is it desirable? So sometimes, and this is a very difficult one, right? And it's a big debate. So sometimes from a corporate world, we feel that this is desirable. Our end customers want it. But perhaps the budget owner, which is sometimes the business unit, may say it's not really aligned to my objective, it's not really aligned to my KPI, for example, right? So I think in order to deploy it, the fundamental first, before we go into the data set, the AI technology, the different algorithms in place, hiring the right technical engineers, we have to get this DVF model, right? Is it really desirable? And usually from our experience, the D is the most important thing. Because if the D is very, very desirable, even if the return on the margin is very, very small, the project will happen. But if the return on the project is so good, but there is no desirability, they're not going to push it, and there's not going to be any adoption of that use cases on that, right? So one of the key things with this, it just goes back to fundamentals of the customer requirement and understanding that first. I think that's number one. Then once you have that, you have to be clear on the KPI. So let's say you get the DVF and everybody's happy with that. You have to be clear that for AI to be deployed, what is the use case? Are you doing it in a measurable way? Are you doing it really to reduce costs on that? Are you really doing it as a customer service, more and more as a revenue perspective? You're entering a new market, right? Or are you using some of this technology along with AI to actually disrupt your own business on that? Now, the reason it's important to classify it in terms of your core business, meaning that to reduce your costs, your adjacent business, for example, to actually enhance or capture new market share or do revenue or to disrupt, is because once you get into AI, you have to design the platform. So the investment of the platform, the technical scalability, the level of security on that, the level of operations, service monitoring on that, and the type of engineers you want to put on it is also very, very, very different. And the time frame of the project is also very, very different as well. So usually we do that. But the final thing, again, going back to your question about limitations, even if you have all this, so you have DVF, you have, is it reducing costs? Is it going to grow my market share revenue, or is it going to disrupt? In AI or in the technology space, in some measure, where that's why we're talking, and that's why we also work very closely with the TCC, Fraser Group, and so on and so forth. It's not possible to work by ourselves. It has to be something like an open talk environment. It has to be something like an open ecosystem environment where different players are coming together, sharing ideas and working together on that. By doing that, we're able to leverage each other's specialization, right? Like TCC is very, very strong on the infra space, on the cloud space, internally with the TCC group. Fraser is more of the real estate. So by coming together, like what we're doing right now, it gives us a better opportunity to grow together as well. So I think three areas to deploy. I think get the DVF model right, and that's really, really important. Spend a lot of time on that. We spend about 40-50% of our time just getting this model right first. The technical aspect is more straightforward, and to be honest with you. Then once we have this online, then when we talk to partners are then they're more clear on what we want to work with them and how we want to work with them and when we want to work with them on that. So I think those three things are the most important to deploy new initiatives, whether it's AI or innovation or technology in terms of the corporate world.
Oh, so when we deploy AI, we should think about DVF and also collaboration also, right?
Yes, must like that.
Okay, คุณซุปคะ is it for the big corporates only or it can be for small scales?
That's a great question. So given the limitation that AI really requires a lot of data, a lot of AI initiatives will probably come from entities that will have access to data. And for good or bad reason, a lot of corporations have access to data. However, corporations are also, because of regulation and so on and so forth, will take time to regulate. So I personally believe that given the open economy, what's happening in the world, there's a lot of governments now that are opening public data to outside. And this then allows access to data to people that are not in corporate companies. This allows open data for SMEs or even for the individual citizen or individual startups to happen. And we believe that this is going to be the trend. And the reason is because, so we start to see this already, right? For good and bad reason. So in Thailand, for example, if you drive over 120 kilometers on the motorway, the AI camera will capture you, right? And I've been unfortunately, yeah, I've been a culprit. I've received many tickets. So it is very, very accurate and it's undeniable. But this is still a very private opportunity. But we believe that over a period of time, more transparency will naturally arise. And this type of data is starting to happen, as we know, in social media. And social media is actually more now the source of data generation. And we talk about data generation outside of AI, it's definitely in the public areas on that. So more data is actually going to come up on social media, and everybody has access to social media. I think that's number one. Number two, I really believe that AI will be driven by more individual because of blockchain. So why do I bring blockchain and AI together? And the reason, or cryptocurrency. So again, going back to data, data will be related to regulation. But if you move into a world where there is no regulation or very, very small regulation, like cryptocurrency, there will not be so much regulation in terms of the data that you can provide over blockchain. And the blockchain itself is already a very, very secure platform on that. So if you register yourself on unused and you deploy blockchain technology, and let's say you're in a regulation environment in the bank, you're still going to have limitation to provide that data outside. But if you're using blockchain and you're on a cryptocurrency, so let's say if in some you create your own cryptocurrency today through an ICO, that data is completely transparent on blockchain. Therefore, more and more people from a transaction standpoint, and because of the economy, it's not doing so well. That's why Bitcoin now is over 2 million baht on that. It's come down a little bit last night. We will see the emergence of more adoption of cryptocurrency transaction data because transaction data also does not lie, right? There's data about what you want to tweet. There's data about what you want to put in social media, but that's your opinion. But when you have a buyer and selling something, that becomes an identity of your behavior. And that data is actually on the blockchain, which is available, and therefore will generate more opportunity for AI. So I think today it's limited in the corporate world, but because of the trend of governments wanting to open up as well for transparency, political reasons as well. If you talk to a lot of people in the government, even in Thailand, they want to drive the increased spend of technology related services to create more of a transparent opportunity, right? At the same time, because of blockchain and because of cryptocurrency has happened in one way because to avoid regulation. So without a regulating body and the technology regulates itself, and blockchain ensures the transparency and the legitimacy of the identity, it becomes a very beautiful environment to have this data, that source of reliability to generate more AI capabilities.
คุณซุปคะ how to build AI capability and
Okay.
accelerate AI adoption in organization?
Okay, so I think the key thing again is it's the fundamental. There's the business case, but to be honest with you, for me, right? So I'm sitting in my office at home, and the most important thing first, I think, as an engineer, we have to upgrade our knowledge and understanding. So I have a lot of technical books as well. So I think the first thing is for people listening, if you're in the corporate world and you're an engineer or you're like a CTO, you have to ask yourself, right? Have you gone through the technical study of the AI? Not just the use cases of AI. Have you gone through the different technology related to it? Have you gone through the architecture of AI? Because from a CTO perspective, deciding a data platform that is now will increase transaction on that platform, and the associated data security concern is a nightmare. AI sounds sexy, but also as a CTO, it's also a nightmare from a data security standpoint and also from a legal standpoint as well. So I think first the CTO or head of engineering needs to understand that balance, and that's the job of a CTO first, not just only the architecture, but has that legal implications and the security implications on that. And if you have that, and then you have a blueprint for your organization on the technical side, meaning like a technical architecture platform, you will find out, at least from my experience, that you can find engineers in the market as long as you give them the proper blueprint and you say that it's very clear, they can do the coding in itself, right? On the other side of the coin, even if you have all that done, is really the source of data. And this is not easy. This is a real kind of go-to market. So how do I acquire more data, right? If it's free data, from a business standpoint, it's not going to give us any competitive advantage, right? But if we have to take the data and then we have to deep in analytics of the data, for example, sentiment is something that's happening. So if I say, if Elon Musk, for example, talks about cryptocurrency, it can go up or it can go down, for example, right?
Yes.
But the amount of data to predict that sentiment is a huge amount of investment. So it also becomes that as you go through the journey of the data acquisition and to build the engineers on that, you need to make sure that you have the right leaders in the organization. Some leaders will say this is a long-term thing and we have to invest and we have to do. Some leaders will say, I don't understand it, which is not their fault. It's a cost, it's not strategic, and I'm going to limit your budget. So you have to solve this first in a corporation right? That you got to understand the implication, not just from technical, but from legal security. So everybody is sabajai first, right? Then you got to convince the board, and this is not, and this is everybody's responsibility anyway. But you got to have the right leaders with the vision that if you really want to get into AI, it takes time, right? Even for us as human beings, right? It takes time for us to learn. If we go back to the traditional education, it takes us 12 years to go through school, another 4 years for bachelor, another 2 years for master's, and so it takes almost 20 years for a human being, right? So for a machine, it can be faster, but you have to invest in the actual platform and the data acquisition on that. If you do that right, I can guarantee you can solve that. Thai engineers are very, very smart. We have some of the best engineers in the world. Our problem as a country is that we don't create these platforms for our engineers to thrive. But we only create opportunities where they become very, very freelance or very small startups on that. But it doesn't mean we don't have the capability. We just don't have the access to the platform from a data perspective on that. But if you clear these two areas, you can definitely find the right engineers in Thailand that can definitely, I think, can actually do this work. Yeah.
Kunsoka, you mentioned about AI partner. What's your consideration to select the right AI partner?
That is a great question, Kap. So I'll share you what we do within Frasers, Kap. So obviously from a business perspective first, we're looking for something that's proven, right? So we don't want an AI model that we need to train so much on that, number one. And we want something that is obviously very secure. So proven not just on the accuracy, but on the security aspect as well. So usually what we do in the Fraser is that we look at international players a lot for the AI models on that. But even if we do that, usually that only results in about 90% of what we need. So for example, on the license plate, it needs to be the Thai alphabet. So then we have to find a local partner, and it's not easy, Captain Som, in terms of finding a local partner with the accuracy of the Thai letters from a license plate. So if cars are moving 100 kilometers at night, it's raining, there's only one or two. We've only actually found one partner here locally that can actually do this on that. And again, they're very, very small. They have limited financial resources, so they take a long time as well. But we look at this combination first, where the majority of our AI engine is coming from an international player that's proven, both technically and also legally on that. So we don't have to worry about that. The 10% is the localization integration of that, right? I think that's number one. The other thing we look at from a partner perspective is not the technical aspect actually, is that do we actually share the same goal, same vision? Do we actually want to make an impact together? Because if we have the right AI company, if we have the AI company that's only looking from a technical perspective, for good or bad reason, they're just going to sell us their service. And that's it, which is not wrong because that's their business. But if we look at something that you have some capability, as a local company here in Thailand, we have some understanding of the industry and we have some understanding of the customer. Again, that DVF. So we understand the business model, we understand the D, we understand the V, you're the F, you make it feasible from a technical standpoint. If we come together, can we actually add additional value back to the market on that? And usually, again, that type of conversation comes from the international players as well on that. The local players want to have this conversation, but because for us, the technical feasibility is not really there. It's too risky sometimes on that. So we end up picking a lot of international players, then working with a local player to customize any kind of local language requirement for the AI, especially around like alphabets on that. And then we look at the business model and we look at the DVF approach to that. And that's how we come together. With this approach of deployment. Yeah.
From the Gartner research, through 2023, they estimate that 50% of IT leaders will struggle to move their AI projects past proof of concept to production level of maturity. What's your opinion and your lesson learned from experience leading AI project?
Okay, that's a great question. So from our experience, what we've done is it goes back to the D. So usually the business just wants this, okay, and they're willing to pay only this. As engineers, we want this. we want to do the fun stuff, right? Yeah. So we don't want just to do the license plate recognition, right? Because we feel that anybody can do that. So the question really becomes is, how can you plant the seeding short term to address the desirability of the business first? Like license plate recognition, we want to reduce security guard costs. That's all we want, right? So if you want to do something else, that's your business, but we don't care, right? But you seed it properly, you decide the architecture, the data naturally comes in, and then you have the strategy to grow that. So what we've done now is we are collecting, we are not collecting, where we have license plate data of people that come into industrial parks from the day one. But from that same data, we're taking it to the next level to move beyond additional use cases on that. So we're looking at the carbon footprint of each car coming in. So we know, for example, let's say customers come in, let's say with a Camry. We know Camry is about 2000 cc. Based on 2000 cc, we know the size of the engine already. Okay. We know the distance from our security guard post where the camera is. We know the name of the customer because he's a registered license plate. So let's say he has to drive from the security guard to 300 meters within our industrial park. We know the distance, we know the size of the engine, and therefore we can calibrate the amount of carbon dioxide this car will exert out on that. And we can take all this information from the same camera that was part of the first project for the license plate recognition. So we can take what we have and then we can leverage that and continue to grow and expand to other use cases on that. Then when we have this conversation, the business, that's great. As a business, the business does not need to pay for that additional use case. The business is happy with that use case. And therefore, we're able as engineers to continue to grow and learn from the technical side and play around with this new platform. So to answer your question, the projects cannot be done as a one-off isolation project. Projects have to be designed from a DVF individually, but they have to be designed from a DVF and what we say a G to be able to grow beyond that project. And if we do that, we naturally take the business hand in hand and we grow with them on that. But if we get stuck on project by project by project, the business might say, I'm not going to reduce my security guard. I'm not ready. So as we give them time, so for example, we've deployed the license plate recognition now for many months, and the business has not yet made the decision to reduce the security guard. So technically, it's not in full production. On the technical side, it's in production, but on the business side, finance has not been able to achieve the savings yet, right? So as we give them time, we are already playing with other things on that, right? And then hopefully they see the end-to-end benefit and comes back to this and gives them the final shove to move it into from a business commitment standpoint on that. But yes, that's a classic problem that we deliver, but the business is still not ready to do the final push on that.
So what's next for AI in business area?
So I really think that AI is going to come in two different areas because of COVID. And I really believe this personal prediction.
Mhm.
I think number one, medicine. AI, I think the COVID vaccination has driven a different approach. Again, I'm not a medical professional, but I do believe that it's all data driven. Based on, for example, now, unfortunately, we have, new variants of Delta Plus. Hopefully everybody watching is still safe. And so we have to ask ourselves, if I was a scientist, what's going to come after Delta Plus? Is it going to be Delta plus plus? What does that look like? Right? Right? Because we've seen that it's been maybe 4 or 5 strands already. So I think we should anticipate that there will be an ongoing variant of plus plus and plus 3, plus 4, and so on and so forth on that. And in order to do that, to predict that, you need data. And in order to do different models, you need machine learning, and you need AI. So I really feel that the medical business will adopt AI much, much faster on that. And I really feel that doctors in the long term will have to learn programming. That's what I really feel. So I graduated from a computer science background on that. And when I was back in school, only people that were learning programming were computer science kids. Now you go to any engineering degree, okay, they all have to learn programming. If you go to high schools today, they have to learn Python. Okay. So programming is going to be the same thing as going to an English class. It's going to be the same thing as learning how to read a book. People will eventually be exposed to how to write code. There'll be easier coding. There'll be more friendly coding, or no code solutions are happening in the market already. But I really feel that the business opportunity, that desirability, will be in the vaccination area. I think that's number one. Okay. Number two, I really feel that another opportunity that will drive because of the demand of the enterprise, like a medical business or a fintech business or any other business, is going to be in the education business. So if you, this data is a little bit outdated, but if you go to the US, fresh grad, and you want to become a machine learning engineer, your annual salary is 140,000 US dollars on that. If you're a data scientist, roughly the same, 140,000 US dollars on that. So roughly that's about 5 million baht per year on that before tax,นะครับ, or roughly around 500,000 baht per month,นะครับ, to be a data scientist engineer,นะครับ. Similar in terms of research scientists, similar to be even a business intelligence. A business intelligence is around maybe 400,000 baht per month,นะครับ. So as people graduate, obviously, and we've seen this with COVID and so on. So people are asking themselves, or kids are asking themselves, how do I make a living? How do I get paid, right? And I think everybody would say, well, be AI. So I think AI will no longer be seen as a computer engineering major. It's going to be completely separate. And maybe you don't have to go through the entire, every single engineering course to achieve it. So I really feel two things is going to happen. I think in the medical space, simply because of the necessity for the human race to survive. I think that's number one. But with that, that will generate a huge business opportunity and therefore a huge demand for resources and for people then to naturally go into AI on that. So I think those are the two areas, education and the medical space, that will see more and more adoption of AI.
This is my last question. So is AI a must or nice to have for future?
That is a great question. So for example, I'm at home, right? I'm a pretty tech guy, and believe it or not, I have zero CCTV at home. I have zero IoT. So I think it really depends on the context. I think that for business reasons, I would say yes, it's definitely something we need. I think it's a must, to answer your question. I think from a lifestyle perspective, I think it's a nice to have, right? So for example, I don't have an Apple Watch. I just wear a normal watch because I don't want to continue to recharge the batteries. So I think on the professional side, definitely a must.
Mhm.
Personal side, I think it's a nice to have.
Mm.
Cap.
Okay, so today we learned a lot from you, DVFG and many things. Thank you very much, Kun Sup, for your kind presence today.
And thank you as well, Kusum. It's great to be on, and it's a great what you're doing as part of the Open Tech Cup. So I wish you all the good of luck.
Thank you ค่ะ สวัสดีค่ะ
ครับสวัสดีครับ
Thank you, our Open Tech audience, for being with us. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe to TCC Technology YouTube channel. See you in our next Open Talk. สวัสดีค่ะ